Hello and welcome to episode 19 of Radio Europa. I'm your host, Will, as usual, and with me I've got Laura from England and Darth from Scotland. Now, today we're going to do something a bit different because normally we do quite a formal analysis of what's been going on in the world, that sort of thing, but today we're just going to do something a bit more relaxed and look at some NPC tweets because, well, it's funny. So last night in the UK, there was an episode of a popular show called Doctor Who. Non-UK listeners, you might know it, you might not. But basically, over recent years, it's got progressively more progressive. So they always put some sort of left-wing or liberal slant and political message in every episode, and it's just getting pretty tiresome. So last night, true to form, they decided to put in a storyline about Rosa Parks. And of course, you can imagine Twitter sphere with the NPCs out in force telling us how racist we all are and how we need television like this to stop us being hateful bigots and come on guys, it's 2018 and that sort of crap. So Laura, do you want to, have you got any of the tweets to have a look at? Because I think we haven't pre-prepared anything, but we're just going to look in real time and read out some funny stuff. So Laura?
Hello. Yeah, can I just pre-warn you that I'm at my grandma's house, so if you hear an old woman in the background shouting at the TV, it's my grandma. So I'm just flicking through the tweets now, and it is just an absolute cringe fest. I'm not sure how Twitter prioritises them, but yeah, it just seems like the cringiest ones seem to be at the top. So it's just complete virtue signaling. It's just people saying things like, well done the BBC for tackling the issue of ingrained racism, which unfortunately, as Twitter shows, still needs to be dealt with. And it's just, that's basically every tweet. You could have just copy and pasted them. Everyone's saying the same things. I'll keep a lookout and see if I can find something like very, very cringy. But they're all pretty much the same thing. People just kind of signalling to each other how they hate racism. And one thing I did want to mention, I kind of mentioned it before we started recording, but I couldn't find it at the time. I found it now. There was an article last month about Doctor Who, and it was, is it the director or one of the writers or something, who was talking about diversity in the show, and he said that they're like deliberately just putting random black people in places where black people weren't throughout history. And he said, we've kind of got to tell a lie. We'll go back in history and there will be black people where historically there wouldn't have been, and we won't dwell on it. We'll say, to hell with it. This is the imaginary, better version of the world. So, I mean, he's just proven to us that they're just, I don't know why it's better, but he's just proven to us that they're just randomly lying about history. Is it a BBC show, Doctor Who, or is it ITV?
It is, yeah. It's BBC. It's been around for years. Since the 60s, maybe, I think, and it's only in recent years that it's become more political. I think when Matt Smith was the Doctor, that was the last time it was decent, and then they brought Peter Capaldi in, and every other episode was like him making some smart-ass quip about bigots and referencing foreigners and all this sort of stuff. It's pretty dire. I'm just scrolling through some of the tweets now. You know, there's some really funny stuff here. Like, let me find that NPC tweet that I just saw. Here we go. Then this is from a blue check mark as well. Racism is still with us, but it's up to us to prepare our children for what they have to meet. Rosa Parks, what a brilliant and important Doctor Who. Love, heart. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
This literally, this whole hashtag is, sycophantic fawning.
There's also lots of people saying that they started crying at the episode, and there's lots of people saying that their kids were watching the episode with them and their kids started crying or started shouting out things at the TV, you know, like during moments of racism.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't happen at the Year Awards.
I'm just saying that the crying stuff. Here we go. The Doctor and the gang meeting Rosa Parks brought tears to my eyes. Excited to see how the rest of the story plays out. Darth, have you got anything for us?
Yep, I've got one here. When your 12-year-old son hears the word, quote, mongrels, describe those who are black or non-white, he almost bursts into tears through sheer disgust. Hashtag Rosa Parks, hashtag Doctor Who. I don't genuinely believe that, kids are that kind of conditioned at that age to understand those things. Here's another one. Explain to my girls that it was less than 79 years ago that Rosa Parks made her stand. It changed everything. It's the little things, the little people, and who together make hashtag big changes. And now we have a female Doctor Who. And talking about Doctor Who and being political, I've been at the cinema a couple of times recently, and they've been advertising the new Doctor Who on the trailers. And one of the things that I noticed, I don't know if you guys noticed it, and it can be taken in two ways, which I suppose is quite clever. When it says, when it shows the title Doctor Who, it says below it, it's something like "It's about time." So that could be taken as it's about time that Doctor Who was back, but I think what they're actually meaning is it's about time that it's a woman that is Doctor Who now.
Yeah, they've made a big deal of that, haven't they? Because it's the first time. For non-UK listeners who don't know much about this, Doctor Who is kind of like James Bond. Obviously, James Bond's always been a British guy, a Scottish guy for most of the time, with an English accent. And Doctor Who has always been a middle-aged-ish sort of guy, male, always been male, English. So it's quite I wouldn't say revolutionary, but it is quite a big deal for them to have a female Doctor Who, and of course, you've got this typical wave of NPC style adoration about the new Doctor. With no regard for whether she's actually a competent actress or not, I don't know. It remains to be seen. But it's like, just because she's a woman, this is absolutely fantastic. It's so odd.
The header photo on Twitter, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's it's a woman, a black man, an Asian, like Pakistani woman, and a white man. It's like the most diverse cover you've ever got. I'm just scrolling through the tweets, and I've just come across a random Wojak NPC meme, and somebody else is taking the mick out of them on Twitter, saying that, complaining about the diversity and saying that it's riveting. And it's David Vance. I don't know if you guys know him. He's quite a big political figure in Britain.
Yeah.
And people are complaining under his tweet, saying they've lost a lifelong viewer. Can't watch this rubbish anymore. This is shite, bring back the aliens.
I've found a quality one. So this is there's so much in this one to talk about. I won't read out the Twitter name because I'll get done for, somebody will report me for something. But this person has got their profile picture is like Trump and Putin merged together with war criminal written on the head. They've got an EU flag in their name. Header taking the piss out of Nigel Farage and Donald Trump, and then this beauty of a tweet. Rosa Parks and MLK, I'm sure he means Martin Luther King, were featured in yesterday's Doctor Who episode, and it was a pure representation of the era. No, it wasn't. Anyway, he goes on to say, what you did was brave and heroic, and you can still fight for justice and freedom. It sounds like a Goldman Sachs corporate initiative. It's just sad.
And also, these people are talking about racism and saying it's alive and well on Twitter today, but they have no idea that the most pampered groups on Twitter and in Britain actually are the non-white groups. And you can say anything that you want about a white Christian straight man, but you can't say anything about a black person or a Jewish person. And it just annoys me how they just come out in solidarity with one side, but whenever there's anything racist said about a white person, they're not interested in it. It is just virtue signaling. It annoys me. I feel irritated just from reading the tweets.
Yeah, me too. How are you doing, Darth, with your tweet searching?
Yeah, not bad. I was trying to find, there was an article written the other day, I think it was an article written, and I think there is more and more kind of people who are cottoning on to the evident politicising of Doctor Who. I I don't think people can deny the fact that it is making very, very strong political virtue signals. Now, obviously, they've got a woman as the Doctor, so I think they're basically capitalising on that, on going for as much virtue signalling as possible. And I mean, in all honesty, I'm not against doing a bit of education. I mean, the BBC was, when I was younger, it was, partially it was very good at being educational, but it's the way that they're doing it. It's very, very obviously politicised and very, very obviously virtue signalling. And I think we all agree that when there is that much of a blatant virtue signalling done by ultimately a taxpayer funded organisation, it just becomes very exhausting.
Yeah, it is a total bore these days because it has become so institutionalised within the BBC's broadcasting that all their programming has a political message. I mean, I found another tweet about this by a guy I follow, actually. He's a left-wing commentator. He's a trade union official and a Labour guy. It's quite a big account, Paul Embry, and he what did he put? I can't remember the last time I watched a BBC drama without feeling I was being preached at. So even people on the left are sort of, or the centre left, the working class left, if you like, the ones that are not all about trans and all this nonsense. I think they're sort of seeing it as well.
Did you see there was a Ryanair passenger had allegedly racially abused a woman on their flight. He basically said he didn't want to sit next to her because of her race, and I think she smelled funny. And obviously this has just coexisted at exactly the wrong time that this episode's dropped. I mean, obviously the guy's been a prat. He should have just sat there and sat next to. I sit next to people I don't want to sit next to all the time on planes, but that's what you do. You pay your ticket. You can't just decide who sits or doesn't sit next to you unless it's something very, 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 very obvious. So the guy should have just sat down and shut up. But it was an unfortunate landing of the episode and this news incident happening at the same time.
Yeah, it did kind of come together in a quite an odd way, but it's also it's irritating, really. And I think people who make these really public displays of racism don't really help us, because it just gives the NPCs on Twitter, it just gives them a reason to say, "Oh, look, this is why we need Rosa Parks in Doctor Who, to educate these dumb racists." And so it is kind of irritating that it works out that way.
I've got another primary school aged child tweet. Watched the hashtag Rosa Parks episode with my 6-year-old, who just couldn't understand why people weren't allowed to sit next to one another. We were both in tears at the end. A few minutes after she said, "I'd have let Rosa sit in my seat. She's my heart on legs."
I'm sure that totally happened.
Well, it's you then oftentimes when things like that are tweeted, people will then reply back and say, "Yeah, my 2-year-old and my 6-month-old were doing exactly the same thing." I wonder if they've just kind of schooled them into saying these things so they can then have a Twitter brag. And see, in all honesty, I just don't see why people put their children on social media like that. Why turn your child into a political stunt?
Yeah, and they all act as if, I think the whole point of the tweets is like as if to say that, these children have got this real profound, naive sense of justice just because they haven't been corrupted by societal racism. And it's like, I'd love to tell these people all the studies that have been done have found that children, before they've watched any television, before they've been exposed to any prejudice, they have racial preference. They're not like these naive utopian communists that their parents make out on Twitter. So I really doubt that any of it happens. I think it's just a way for people to virtue signal.
One other thing that I'm seeing on Twitter as well is a lot of people saying it's important that we learn from history. But if they're replacing British people with Africans and passing that off as correct, then that isn't learning from history, is it? What they basically mean is it's important that we learn the parts that are pro non-white and anti-white, and then the rest, it doesn't matter if they're true or not.
But you've got to remember what the BBC did with the Roman educational piece that they did for schools, where they were trying to teach kids that the Roman Empire had lots and lots of people from all over the world were working in the empire, and that brought up a lot of kind of controversy. But this is their bed that they wish to lie in. They want to write history in a way that satisfies all people. I mean, to go off on a bit of a tangent here, I was listening to a podcast today. There's a guy who was interviewing an anti-feminist, and she was talking about there was one of her friends was an astrologist, an astronomer, and he had worked in Australia, and he'd ended up leaving Australia because he was effectively not ever going to make progression in his career, because the university was obsessed with hiring only females. And there was a woman who had come in and said a postgrad student had come in to speak with all the workers and was talking about how women were underrepresented, and none of the laws and none of the systems and the stars had been named after females. And what she correctly pointed out was, well, none of the women were doing any research into this. I mean, you've got Galileo, you've got Isaac Newton, you've got all these people who spent all of their life studying, these things which we have now. And women are saying, well, that's not fair that men had stuff named after them. It's like, well, they did all the work. And it's the same thing what they're doing here. They're trying to rewrite history in a way that is postmodern, and it's happy and everybody's included. And it's like you can't change history. You can try all you want to make it fit your narrative, but ultimately history is history. Stop trying to change it, because it then becomes very dangerous. You end up then in 1984.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think this is such a recent thing as well, because I can remember just when Matt Smith was the Doctor in Doctor Who. It was the last season I properly watched because, well, he's incredible and it was a really good storyline. But the last season, there was an episode where they went back in time and met Richard Nixon. I don't know if any of you saw it, but it was good and it was interesting and it was funny, and there was no... I mean, obviously the BBC don't like Richard Nixon because he was a Republican and he's considered right of centre and whatever. But there was no political message in there. There was no fuck Nixon, lol, retweet. It was pretty neutral and funny and entertaining. But now just like 4 or 5 years later, this is how far they've gone the other way. So I think it is quite a new thing, and it's incredible to see how many people fawn over it on Twitter. It's just... Although, as David Cameron once said at a Conservative conference, Twitter and the British people are not the same thing. So I take from that what you will.
It is interesting about the BBC, because it definitely wasn't like this when I was growing up. I mean, we used to watch BBC school programmes while I was at school, and I remember watching loads of stuff on the BBC that I loved, but definitely over the last 5 or 6 years, it's just got so bad, and I can't entertain anymore. Even if I put the BBC News on, after about, well, I don't have a TV anymore, but at my old house when I lived with my friend, just after about 30 seconds, you can just see the indoctrination seeping through the TV. And just like every single thing that they do, it winds you up. But I wrote an article about diversity quotas for Defend Europa, and I want to write another one actually, because I don't think we give it enough thought. I think it's a very, very serious thing. And obviously at the last census in Britain, 2011, Britain was 87% white British. That will have dropped now. But they're always saying the people that are on the TV show, or the people that are in Parliament, or the...
Laura?
Laura?
Oh, she's gone.
her internet connection must have dropped.
Looks like it's just you and me. I'm just going through, when Laura was talking, I was just going through the hashtag again to try and find a couple more tweets to sign off with, because I got to say to the listeners, if you want to see peak NPC, go and search Doctor Who on the hashtag Doctor Who on Twitter, because wow, there's a lot of mindless stuff on here.
Have you got one there?
I mean, there's one that I've just seen. Doctor Who challenges its own history with social issues, and it's kind of like, you can see where this is going now. They're going to look at all the old episodes of Doctor Who and go into them and redress all the issues surrounding race. But no, have you got anything interesting? You've got stuff like 1963, a new children's series aired aiming to educate children by using time travel to visit various points in history. 2018, thanks to that same series, Rosa Parks is now trending and millions of children have learnt about the civil rights movement. Take a bow, hashtag Doctor Who. Again, I'm all for education. I'm all for, teaching kids about stuff, but it's the way it's so blatantly forced. And I think it's just it comes across as more forced because they have made such a big deal of, Doctor Who changing sex and becoming a woman, and there's obviously, when a male and a female are acting, male and females act differently. They are different after all. So, there's there'll be a different vibe from this new actor. So I think coupled that with this, big moment in history, it comes across as very, very forced. Here's another one. Quite a thing to sit with my daughter Annie Rosa watching the first female Doctor Who tell the story of a woman who inspired her middle name. Her school blazer adorned with the badge which reads, quote, "The future is female," hangs on the banister in the hall. Doctor Who, hashtag Rosa Parks. And that there, the future is female. How far are we going to go with this? Again, you're hearing of these demands. It's mostly from education campuses where men are being told, stand back, don't do anything. You have had your time, stand back and let your fellow sisters step forward and live their lives. And both men and women both have equally, equal amounts of things to offer society, but we are determined to remove men from our society and allow women to take control. And it's being shown like women have never had any influence in society at all, and it sets a worrying precedent in the future, I think. Yeah, and they make out, don't they? They make out that women suffered like centuries of oppression and that they were downtrodden. Anyone would think that. I've got to say, if I was a black dude, I'd probably be looking at this and thinking, hang on a minute, were women enslaved too? Because it's like with that silly bitch in America, Amy Schumer, where she's there doing the raised fist, the whatever symbol it is, as if like she's part of some oppressed minority. Where, I mean, she's a white woman, for Christ's sake. There's no disparity between the position of men and female. Huh?
Isn't Shima Jewish?
Quite possibly. So I will correct myself. No, she's a Jewish woman, which means she's even more privileged.
She's a fellow white.
Fellow white.
Seeing that we're touching on this subject, I think it works nicely with, it's an American topic, but you had Elizabeth Warren, one of the senators in the US, and she recently took a DNA test because she was trolled by Trump to the point where she was saying she was of Native American heritage, and she took a DNA test which showed that she was somewhere in the region of possibly 1 in 1,024, 1 part in 1,024 Native American. So what many people were saying was Donald Trump had set up the challenge of, if she could prove she was Native American, he would donate £1 million to a charity of her choice. So what many people were saying was Donald Trump should give her a $900 and something check because she has proved that she has only 1,024th Native American. And again, it's this obsession of trying to fit identity politics into everything. She is trying to be a victim, trying to be somebody who is oppressed so that people will accept her, because the left, if you're white, if you're straight, you're not going to be accepted. So it's this attempt to find a privileged group that you can then virtue signal out of.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that as well is that the average, and I've got to say, I know Americans don't always like to talk about this, but I've got to say it, the average white American has more black blood than Elizabeth Warren has Native American blood. So that, that would be the same as all of white America demanding affirmative action under the rules that give blacks affirmative action because they've got a percentage of black DNA, black blood, and it's like, it just doesn't work like that.
I think I heard the average American has more Native American blood than Elizabeth Warren does. And the even bigger problem for her is these DNA companies have very little Native American DNA in their systems because the Native Americans don't have this obsession with their ancestry. They know that their ancestors are Native American. They've no need to prove it. So they don't submit themselves for testing. So I think the companies have to go with South and Central American heritage as well. They have to pull DNA from many different countries to try and even come close to something that looks like Native American DNA.
Yeah, it's so in reality, she could not really have any at all. She could just be part Hispanic or 1/1000th Hispanic, whatever it is. By the way, welcome back, Laura. Before we sign off, have you got anything you want to add to the NPC Doctor Who shenanigans?
I did find a rather funny one actually, but it was somebody. Oh yeah, listen to this tweet. Really enjoying this new kick-ass feminist Doctor Who. Elderly UKippers must be spluttering into their pot and swallowing their dentures. How bad is that one?
I bet it was a middle-class white guy who tweeted it as well.
It's the guy called Tom with a picture of his dog as his profile picture. Oh, I've just clicked on his profile and he's just complaining about everybody being racist. So there you go.
He's one of them. One of them. By the way, I think you've just made a video about those sorts of people, haven't you?
Oh yeah, it was my first video, and it took me ages to make it because I was trying to learn how to use the software, and I just taught myself how to use it. But yeah, I've made a video about white liberal men and just kind of tried to analyse how they seek social approval, and they kind of try to latch on to the dominant morality so that they can feel safe and secure and stuff. So actually, I'll link it below this stream if that's okay, so people can watch it if they want.
Yeah, good idea. I think I mean, there's only so much we can do on taking the piss out of NPCs. So I think we'll leave it there for this week. But as I said, we wanted to do something a bit different, a bit more relaxed, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it or been suitably outraged by the level of mindlessness on Twitter. And please, listeners, do go and look at that hashtag, because it's a total cringe fest. It's just embarrassing. And as Brits, we can only apologise for the state of people representing us on social media. But there it is. Like Laura said, we'll put a link to her video, which is very good. So you should all go and have a look at it in the comments, in the description below. As usual, go back and check out some previous episodes where we've done some more serious topics, and there's some really good stuff back there. We spoke about Bolsonaro last week. It was very interesting. And the election is coming up at the end of this week on Sunday, I believe, in Brazil. So no doubt we'll be talking about that some more. Finally, we are sustained only by our listeners' generosity. So if you do want to donate to us, then we'll leave the links to that in the description below. And just reiterate, as I do every week, we don't take a penny from this. It all goes towards funding the project. So any donations are greatly appreciated. So on that note, I think we'll say goodbye, and thanks for joining me on this one, Laura and Darth.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.